Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are taking a look at a Schleich figure. It's not a new for 2020 figure or anything like that. It was actually released a few years ago. It may have been last year or maybe the year before. I'm not entirely sure because I didn't really buy the figure when it had initially came out, so I'm not positive as to when exactly it released, and I wasn't a huge fan of the figure overall initially. I thought it looked interesting, but not something that I was dead set on picking up. However, as time went on, I really did start to take a liking to the figure. I happened to see it a few times at Tractor Supply. Every time I would visit that store, I would see the Brachiosaurus sitting there, and it just kind of started to grow on me a little bit, so I did eventually end up picking one up. I purchased it on eBay, and I have it here now to take a look at with you guys. And actually, in person, I think it's really quite nice, actually. Again, it's kind of one of those figures that right away when you see the initial prototype images, you're not super excited about, or at least that's how it was for me. It was something that I was like, if I find it cheap, I'll buy it. And as time went on, the more I actually looked at it, the more impressed I actually became by the figure. Again, it's not the best figure ever, and it's certainly not, in my opinion, the best Schleich Brachiosaurus ever, but it does have a pretty decent appearance. I will give it that. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt, I think the head sculpt looks decent enough. The scale work on it looks alright. It doesn't look like it's anything spectacular. The scales all, for the most part, appear to be a similar size on the face, but I don't think that takes away from the figure or anything. I'm not so sure I personally would have given it so much of a scaly look. I feel like maybe just more of a more fine type of a skin texture I would have done on a Brachiosaurus face, but at the same time I still think it does have a pretty appealing appearance. You've got the nostrils up there, up on the top of the head. It really quite resembles a little bit of a Jurassic Park Brachiosaurus, but again, even the Brachiosaurus in Jurassic Park didn't have such a strong scaly look to the face, but I think again it looks decent, just not that great. You've also got the teeth sculpted out in there, and the teeth actually do look quite nice, especially for a Schleich figure. You normally have some pretty ugly teeth in the mouth, but that is not the case with this one. You can see a little bit of sloppiness as far as the paint though, but inside the mouth you've got a really bright red coloration for the tongue. I'm not a big fan of such a bright reddish coloration for the tongue. I really feel like it's not that natural looking. It almost looks like the Brachiosaurus now has blood in its mouth or something. Maybe it bit its tongue when it was trying to eat some vegetation and now has a little bit of a bloody appearance to its tongue. So more of like a pinkish type of a coloration, in my opinion, would have probably been a little more natural, but again, that's just really up to you and what you feel like looks good inside the mouth of a dinosaur. You've got the eyes painted with a nice brownish coloration, and you can definitely see how well glossed they are. They really have a beautiful gloss, nice black pupil. The pupil actually looks a little sloppy as far as the paint goes, but it doesn't look terrible. Oh, I just smacked the camera with its big fat head. And then you can see over here, the eye looks decent again over here. Not perfect, but good enough, and it does include a really nice gloss coat to help the eye look really quite realistic. And even on the face, you can see a few different shades of greens, kind of like even a lighter green has been dry brushed over certain areas to bring that detail out quite nicely. As you start to lead down the neck, you can see that same similar style of scaling that you have on the face turns up here onto the top of the neck, but it gets to a very large, almost like an armored type of a scaling that runs down the entire neck here on the upper side of the neck. And you can also see that it's kind of been given like a light green dry brushing over top of that dark green, which does help to give it some pretty decent color variation. And I really do actually quite like the coloration of the figure. And even as we turn down here, first of all, you can see the really beautiful skin texture, all the creases and cracks in the skin, and even some skin folding and everything going on. Really nice detailing here on the underside. I actually would have preferred the figure to have had this same similar style of sculpt, I think, than having these very large armored type of scales. I really feel like this would have looked a lot better, and also kind of a lot similar to the older Brachiosaurus figures from Schleich, but in my opinion that's not a bad thing because I really am a big fan of their older Brachiosaurus figures. But you can see that the detailing and sculpt here on the underside of the neck is really, really incredible. As we move down the neck, it starts to transition from that green to like a light type of a whitish type of a color, or almost like a light gray, and it looks really good. The transition is very smooth, very natural looking as well. And there's also that really nice dark wash that's been included to bring out all the detailing throughout all the cracks in the skin. And I love when Schleich includes that dark wash But again, you really can see just how incredible of a job sometimes that Schleich can do as far as sculpting out the detail of their figures, because this one specifically is incredible looking in certain areas, especially here on the underside. Even in the chest, you can see such beautiful detailing, and then even as we lead down the entire underside, it continues the whole way through as far as the detailing here. Really beautiful looking for sure. As you move down the neck here, as far as these larger armored scales get, you can see that they do increase in size the further down the body we go, especially if we stay up near the spinal column. You can see that they do stay really quite large, and then they get a little bit smaller, they diminish in size the further down into the limbs that you go, and you can see that once you get down here into the thigh and this area here, that the scales get very, very small. Same deal right here, you can see the scales are really small once we get down here into the front leg. You can take note to the shoulder blade there protruding from the skin a little bit, although it's sort of hidden with these larger armored type scales. And then once you move down the leg, you can see some nice creasing here in the joint of the front leg. There's the elbow there, sculpted out quite nicely. Beautiful detailing as far as the skin detail once we run down the length of this front limb, and then we get down here into the foot. You can see that the nail is painted and sculpted out. It's decent, but it's again nothing that great. It's kind of small and kind of awkward looking, honestly, and even the feet look a little bit weird. They almost look like a tree stump or something that's been like cut in half. You just have like a totally flat, very circular style foot sculpt. It just doesn't really look like there's too much life to it, and I think it looks a little bit weird. Could have definitely been done a little better. It almost looks like something I would see on like a Brachiosaurus from a cartoon. But if we stay away from the feet, and honestly I don't really like the feet here in the back either. None of the feet on this dinosaur specifically are really nice looking, but if we stay away from the feet, I think once we hit the ankles and up, the dinosaur does look pretty decent. Once we look here in the stomach region, you can see as I turn it again, lots of really nice skin detail throughout the dinosaur, and even as I turn it, you can get a sense of a few different shades of greens and everything included, and how smooth that transition is from the green to that light underbelly does look really good. You can see again some muscle tone a little bit here, sort of shining through within those scales. You can see it kind of right there as far as the thigh goes, and lots of really nice creasing here in the joint of the knee, and you also have the kneecap there showing a little bit. And then once we get down here to that foot, you can see that the nails are painted there, but the foot sculpt again looks a little bit weird, a little bit awkward. And then we come back up here as we approach the tail from the thigh. You can see lots of skin wrinkling, lots of really nice movement being shown there in that specific area. And then we lead out the length of the tail, and again that skin detail, especially right here, just showing the way the skin is wrinkling and creasing, especially as this tail is curved. It's really creasing all of the skin here. That looks extremely cool and definitely has a beautiful appearance. And again, those scales, they get kind of very fine as we move down the tail too, and once we move back up the tail, you can see how they increase in size and get very large. Looking at the opposing side, again, the neck looks pretty nice, especially down here on the underside as far as the detailing goes. I really do love the skin texture and the way they've applied that nice dark wash. We have that same similar style to those large armored scales the whole way through. As we lead down here into the body, you can see some very nice musculature here in the front leg. Really nice creasing again in the joint of the elbow and the elbow itself. And then we move down the body here into the foot, and the foot again looks super awkward. I don't really know why, but they just did not do a good job on the feet of this Brachiosaurus. As far as I'm concerned, they just look weird to me. I don't know exactly what it is, but definitely look off. And again, the skin detail here in the stomach is really beautiful. I love the skin detail on this figure. Every area that I see, look at the creasing right here in the back of the leg and the back of the knee there. Really nice detailing here as the rear leg connects to the body once again, and you can see the muscle tone and the kneecap as we move down the body. The foot kind of actually looks a little better on this side, I think, than the opposing side. I'm not sure why, but I actually kind of like the foot sculpt back here. I mean, it's not great, but it definitely looks like the best of the bunch as far as the foot sculpt goes. And then we move out the tail again, really beautiful, dark wash included, lots of really nice skin texture and creases in the skin and everything as we lead out the tail. So definitely not the best Brachiosaurus ever, but it does still have some pretty appealing features to it. As far as a size goes, and it is a pretty sizable figure, you're looking at just under 7¼ inches or around 18½ centimeters in height. And for a length on the Brachiosaurus, from the head to the curvature there in the tail, you are looking at about 12.25 inches long, or around 31 and maybe 31.5 centimeters, somewhere in that range. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon inappropriately trying to take the Brachiosaurus for a ride. But next to these figures, hopefully you'll have a pretty good idea of how well this Brachiosaurus sizes up, because it does have some pretty darn good size to it, especially for a Schleich figure. So, in an attempt to save this Brachiosaurus, we're going to take Mr. Papo Rex out of here before he takes a chomp out of its neck, and also probably put Muldoon in the corner for his inappropriate action. So as far as this Schleich Brachiosaurus goes, it is definitely not the best Brachiosaurus of all time. That is without question. I don't think you'll ever find any figure released from Schleich that you can definitely say is the best figure of that species ever. But this figure specifically, as far as this Brachiosaurus goes, is pretty nice. It's not terrible. I am not a huge fan, like I had stated earlier, in the kind of armored type of an appearance when it comes to these very large scales up on the top of the Brachiosaurus. But at the same time, it is very different than most Brachiosaurus figures, and it does have a bit of a unique appearance to it because of that. So it kind of is like a 50-50, where it sort of has like that unique appeal to it because it's so different than most Brachiosaurus figures, but then at the same time, it's not really that good looking overall, I think, as far as those very large armored type of scales go. On a Brachiosaurus, I would have preferred, again, to have just seen maybe the entire body covered with that really, really beautiful skin detail that they have sculpted on here, because honestly, as far as the actual skin texture goes, I think they absolutely nailed it. The skin texture alone is incredible looking as far as the detailing goes, and very, very impressive. And then we throw on these very large scales, and it just sort of gives it a little bit of an awkward look, but at the same time, the scales look kind of nice, and the way they've applied that paint with like a light green dry brushing helps to make the scales jump out at you, and does help to kind of give the dinosaur a little bit of a striking appearance in a way. The uses of the green on the figure is actually really quite nice. I wouldn't expect green to work so well on a sauropod. Most sauropods I see are normally like dark grays or even light grays, and it always looks really natural on the figure. And even the previous Schleich releases all had that same similar style of paint as far as the dark grays go, but this one now we've gone with a very nice green coloration, and it really does look natural on the figure. It does look really, really good. Surprisingly good, I will say, and the way they've painted and applied the paint, it looks really good as well. It's very natural looking, definitely looks like it's the body color of the animal and not just paint slapped on a figure, so they do get kudos in that area as far as this Brachiosaurus goes. And overall, I really do think it is a nice figure. It's just not as nice as it could have been. Again, there's some upsides, there's some downsides, so it's sort of like a 50-50 as far as this Brachiosaurus goes, and probably will just depend on your preference as to how you like your Brachiosaurus to look. If you'd rather a more unique, something different type of a look, then this one might be your guy, but if you're more of a fan of the traditional, beautiful, skin-textured style of a Brachiosaurus with less scaling, then this guy's probably not going to be your guy. Regardless, if you want to pick this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do just that on everythingdinosaur.com and Dejankins.com. So make sure you check the link in the description, purchase it from one of those two websites. But before you do that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.